What's going on, boys and girls? Welcome back to the Eating Shit podcast. If you are new here, this is a place where I can come on here weekly and just share lessons that I have learned throughout the week in business, mostly in the real estate business, since that's what I'm doing full time right now. And really, like, the only goal with this podcast is to keep it transparent and provide value for you guys, so you don't have to make the same dumbass mistakes that I've made over and over.
Stupid.
Hopefully my sound bites work here, but yeah, I think it's just super important. I mean, obviously, like, you have to provide value or no one's going to listen to your shit, but also like the transparency part, just like the age and the times that we live in is increasingly less and less transparent, I think. And you guys that have been following me for a while know that I talk about Andy Frisella all the time. But, you know, I really do credit him for kind of like getting me on this path when I started listening to him, you know, back in 2015, 2016, something like that, with the MFCEO project. So if you guys have never heard of Andy, definitely go listen to his shit. But, you know, there's a ton of good and transparent people to listen to. But, you know, since he's the one that did like start me down this path, I just kind of default to that. But I was thinking about it earlier, and, you know, really, like, he did me a great service by sharing his actual story on the podcast. And, you know, he talks about it all the time, but when I started listening back then, I think he's in like 24 years of business now. But when I started listening, it was like 18 years of business. And, you know, that was the real story, is like the first 10 years that him and his business partner started supplement superstores and then eventually started First Form Supplements. They were really, really struggling for 10 years straight. And for whatever reason, I always think about that. Like, when we're struggling or I'm just struggling with something, like, good shit takes time to build. So, like, just because it doesn't happen overnight or it doesn't happen in a year or two, like, doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. And there are people like him that have actually done real shit and are super, super successful, that, you know, it's taken them, you know, 24 years to get where he's at right now. It took him, you know, 10 years to get the thing off the ground. So he's got a pretty crazy story. And I just really appreciate that when we're in a world of like, you know, oh, I started wholesaling and I made $50,000 on my first deal and I closed it in 41 days. Like, it's just not fucking realistic at all. You know, that's like the disclaimer: results may vary. Like, you'd have to be just a G at sales and like really, really lucky to close any wholesale deal that fucking fast. And then especially to get one where you made that type of fee on it. So you see shit like that, not just with wholesaling, but like really any business. And if you guys are, you know, interested in entrepreneurship or business or what have you, I'm sure you see the same ads that I get all the time. And yeah, like, there's tons of good education out there. There's tons of good courses out there, but, you know, there's a lot of like scammy type guru people that are really good at selling a course. And it's like, who knows what they've actually done? And maybe they have done some shit, but just on average, like, if you're 21 years old, probably haven't done all that much, in, you know, the 3 years you've been an adult. I would rather listen to the guys that are a bit older that have like grown real companies and they're verifiable and stuff like that. So you can definitely learn from everyone. But yeah, I just really appreciate like those type of stories of just like a decade of eating shit before anything really started to take off. Cause it's easier to just stomach like what you're going through at the moment, trying to get your shit off the ground too. So I don't really sell anything. You know, all I ask is that you guys share the show. If you get value out of this, share it. And hopefully, you know, your friend that you share it to will get some value as well. If you do want to show some support, if you're local here in Reno or Northern Nevada, send us some deals to buy. That's all I ask. And then, you know, buy some shit from Bad Touch, my motocross glove company, hoodie, shirt, whatever you want. And then, you know, I got some affiliate links down in the show description, or if you're watching on the FEEKiflips YouTube channel, they're also in the description there as well. Mostly just for like real estate tools and shit like that, if you need to do that. And also, if you do want a real estate course or like a coaching program or whatever, like I said, I don't have one. I just don't have time to do it. Maybe someday, but you know, I can get you referred to the one that Wes and I, my business partner, are a part of, the mastermind that we're in, that is real estate specific. So yeah, if you want to like at least find out what that's about, just shoot me a message on any platform and I'll get you submitted so they can reach out to you and do that. Yeah, it's, I'm, like I said, my goal is just to come on here every week and really just talk about the last week, because, we're always learning lessons, like no matter what. So, there's always going to be stuff to talk about. And, I think this was actually, I was thinking about this earlier too. This is like a great example of like, not transparency, but how perspective, especially like on the internet or just from the outside looking in, is vastly different than what happens in real life, which is also important for you guys to keep in mind. And like, I always like, even the guys I like and follow and stuff, you always take what they say with a grain of salt, because you never know the entire situation. You never know like what they're going through personally, or, you just don't know anyone's backstory. So you can never like pocket watch anyone, especially if you get in that hater mentality of like, oh, that person's doing so much better than me. You just never know what their true story is. Or like, most people, when you follow them on the internet, they're only going to put up the highlight reel. Like Instagram is the highlight reel of everyone's life. So if they're killing it, and they could truly be killing it, you're only going to see how they're killing it, but you never know if like the rest of their life is a wreck, or like, they could have just had a huge loss, but they're probably not going to post that type of shit. And it was funny because yesterday I was, talking to a buyer here in town that, I've wholesaled a bunch of deals to in the past, great relationship with him. And I was just running this other deal by him. And, we're talking about this deal. And then before we got off the phone, he was like, "Hey dude, what are you doing right now?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, I was talking to Steve, who's another buyer in town that buys a bunch of flips." He's like, "I was talking to Steve yesterday and he said that you brought him like 3 deals in the last day and like, you're just killing it." And like, I started laughing because we've been struggling so bad. If you guys listen to last week's episode, I talked about the $110,000 loss that we had last week. And then this week, we'll get into the lessons here in just a second, but it's just been like a hectic time, a hectic last 2 months of just like eating shit and struggling like way more than usual. So it's funny for him to say that, but that's a great example of like, he doesn't know. He just heard that I brought this other dude a few deals this week. And like, yeah, we did do that, but it was just happened to be like weird timing on stuff. And those were just like specifically in the area that Steve buys in, so of course I'm going to send him those deals and I didn't send it to this other guy. But just a good example of like, perspective from the outside. He hears one thing and he's like asking me what we're doing. I'm like, dude, you don't want to do whatever the fuck we've been doing for the last 3 months. You don't want to be doing that. Trust me. Like we're not doing good right now. So, yeah, it's just like lesson for everyone. Like anything anyone says, grain of salt, because you never know what's going on, like the full picture at least. So let's hop into lessons for this week. Yeah, I was thinking, we had a couple for sure. I wanted to talk about this one deal that basically fell apart completely this week. I've known it was going to fall apart for the last 2 weeks, but now it has actually fallen apart. And we did have a few lessons on this deal. So, I mean, it sucks. And I try not to think about like, I like the saying, like, you can't lose what you don't have. So like when a deal falls apart, we never made the money and then lost it. It's just like potential income that you missed out on. So I feel like we lost a $14,000 wholesale, but like we never completed it. So you don't have anything to lose. So I have to keep that in mind. But we missed out, I will say, on a $14,000 wholesale that I've been working on for, the last 6 weeks pretty heavily. And then it ended up falling apart. So big lessons with this deal is like when you do have processes and how you do business, like they're there for a reason and you need to stick to them. And with this specific deal, I personally deviated from the process quite a bit. So for our disposition process, like we run our wholesales a certain way. When we know that we're not going to buy the property and we're going to, partner with someone or wholesale it or whatever we're going to do, like it's done a specific way. And we've come up with this process from doing it a lot of different times. And then just like the cleanest, most efficient way to do it. And I deviated from the process for a few different reasons on this specific house. One, it was like a newer construction than we normally touch. It was vacant, so it was easy to show. And then when we locked it up, it was like around the Thanksgiving holiday. So typically, when we wholesale a deal, we'll lock something up. We'll get all the marketing material pulled together, whether it's like photos, video walkthrough, Matterport, all that stuff. And then we blast it out to the other buyers in town. And then, I'll sit there since I'm doing dispo right now, and I'll go through and call one by one for like the VIP/the active buyers list. Just to make sure that they saw it, drum up some additional interest, yada, yada, yada. And then a couple of days after that, we'll do like an open house type thing where if the property's not vacant, we'll get it vacant for a couple hours. Anyone that's interested at the property or in the property, they can come look at it at that time. That is their time to do their due diligence. They show up, they do what they need to do. If they need to have a contractor walk it or a inspector or whatever, that's the time to do it, because when the deal gets assigned to them, they're releasing all due diligence. It's a done thing. They're saying that they're good to go. And then we require, buyer EMD in after that to protect us from them bailing last minute, the buyer bailing last minute. And then we would end up losing our earnest money as well. That's how it's supposed to work in a nutshell. There's a lot, different steps within that, but because of what this was and the time of year, I just deviated from the process. We had longer timelines than normal on this. Usually we're doing like a 30-day close, and we had 6 weeks on this one, or 2 months actually, 60 days to close. So 8 weeks. And because of those things, and it's like clean, it's newer, blah, blah, blah. Like I just didn't follow the process, and that like ended up fucking us. And I didn't realize it at the time. And I was thinking about, last week about, all the wholesales that we've done since the market shifted in June, and like the ones that were super easy and the ones that were just like a pain in the ass, and like what the difference was. And I was kind of expecting to find like a golden ticket and then just be like, oh, we just need to go after like this type of seller from here on out, or like this type of property from here on out. And I didn't really find anything like that. But what I did think of, or one of the things that I thought of, was like these deals that have been easy for us to process, and just like, they just go off without much of a hitch. And it's like, yes, that's exactly how it should work every single time. One common denominator that I found was that, I hit it hard for dispo right when we got it in contract. I held one open house. I got as much interest as possible in the property. I got as many people to show up to the open house as possible, which resulted in multiple offers. And when you have that, then you have some leverage, instead of like basically begging people to buy the deal from you. And, not that all the offers were good and like it was a highest and best situation or anything like that, but I think just the fact that like, here's your time to come look at it. That's it. They show up, and then, other buyers are there, and we're not doing an auction or a bidding war or anything. But I think just the fact that they saw other people at the property, that kind of puts a little bit more pressure on them to at least get an offer submitted, because it's like, oh, I'm not the only one that wants this thing. It's just like a psychological thing, I guess. So with this one being totally vacant and easy to show and not a very heavy rehab at all, I was like, dude, this thing's going to be easy as shit to sell. Like, no problem. This is like easy deal coming up. And that's not what happened. And, with the holiday, I was going to do the open house, but then it was like, oh, well, now it's Thanksgiving. So I ended up fucking going over there like 6 times or something to show buyers. I did hold an open house where, a few people came by at one time. But then like, I was showing, I let, buyer that's a buddy go by himself with his inspector. I'm meeting buyers I've never met before over there, just them, all this stuff. And it was only because like we couldn't sell it. Like obviously if we had like solid offers, you just take one, or, try to get a few of them at least. And we just didn't have those. So then it's like, well, to me, it's always like, did I do everything I could do to sell this deal or like get the most for it? And then, if people haven't seen it yet, it's like, well, no, I haven't. Well, no, I haven't. So I'll go meet this person over there. I'll go meet this person over there. And it just like never ended up working out. So it was a pain in the ass, but we did end up finding a buyer. We had to get a price reduction with the seller to make it work. So we got that. It was all good to go, got it assigned. And then a hole in the process was found. And this is funny because like, even if you do have processes and even if you do like follow them, you just by doing, sometimes things that you may have missed or overlooked so many times get exposed. And that's what happened here in our like transaction coordination process. In over, 100 deals, this has never been an issue for us before. And what happened is that like the seller never communicated with the title company and the payoff never got ordered. And the payoff, for those of you guys that are like pretty new to real estate, that's, basically what you owe on the property. The title company has to get something signed by the seller. That's an authorization to order the payoff. And then they're going to contact the bank and actually order down to the penny, how much the seller owes the bank as far as their mortgage goes. And I didn't realize this because I had been communicating with the seller the whole time. And, she ended up texting me. I can't remember what for, but when she texted me, it was just like, hey, this is so-and-so. And I knew who it was. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I just been writing to her, but I didn't realize that number was a different number than I had supplied the title company when we first went into contract with them, because she had gotten a new number like right after we signed the contract. So title's been trying to reach out to her and they can't reach her. And granted, like, yeah, they've been emailing her too. And like, she legit just like did not get back to the title company until it was last minute. So then at this point, the deal's assigned, it's ready to go, buyer EMD's in, title is ready minus having the payoff. And so now we're like a week out. And with the price reduction, we told her that we can close early before the end of the year, which was a benefit to her because, she's just trying to get the thing done as fast as possible. And then also she would now have one less mortgage payment if we didn't, or if we closed, by the end of the month. And now title doesn't have the payoff. So they did contact her or like, I'm now like, hey, title needs your payoff, like get back to him. And finally we got her to do it. And then, so the payoff never got ordered until 1 week before we were supposed to close. And with these things take time, you're dealing with big banks and stuff like that. And then we had like a holiday in there. It was like Christmas, I think. So we were already down a day that week and they pulled it off. Payoff came in right before or the day before we were supposed to close. And that's all we were waiting for. Payoff comes in and the seller told us that she owed one amount, which was, lower than our contract price. The payoff comes in and it's a higher amount than our contract price. And it's actually a higher amount than we had the thing assigned for too. Like by quite a bit because she was behind on payments and she had these fees and penalties and all this other shit. So then, I'm like, hey, the payoff says this. And she, oh no, that's not right. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to talk to the bank that those fees are not supposed to be there, yada, yada, yada. So, okay. No progress could be made with the bank. We end up going back to the original closing date, which was 2 weeks after that. Trying to work with the bank the whole time. They won't play ball. She's essentially asking them to short sell it, which is sell for less than you owe on the property. And they wouldn't do it because it had never been on market to try to get like a higher offer than she had in hand. So essentially like the deal fell apart because short of the sellers bringing about $30,000 to the closing table to sell their house, we couldn't process it at the current purchase price. We would have had to pay more than the payoff. Obviously the 30,000 is not an option for them to get rid of the house, nor was it ever, we're not asking for that, of course, but, yeah. So that one hole in the process, the hole was that like, we didn't confirm that seller had been communicating with escrow. So now like immediately, Steve that does our in-house TC stuff, I'm like, hey, as soon as you get the email from prelim or from title with the preliminary title report, which is like the first thing they order when you open up escrow, I was like, respond. And instead of just saying received, say received, did the payoff get ordered yet? So we can, stay on top of that in the future. And then further than that, I even asked Amy, our escrow officer, because they have to have the authorization signed to order the payoff. I was like, can I just get that signed by the seller, up front when we're taking care of purchase agreement, just have the loan authorization thing for you guys to order the payoff? And she was like, yeah, no problem. I'll get you a blank one. So that'll be another thing that, it just sucks when, stuff falls apart and you end up missing out on, a deal and quite a bit of money, just because of when you're relying on other people. So like the less we have to rely on other people, the better. So if we're able to, one, confirm that payoff has been ordered, and two, get that authorization signed up front so payoff can be ordered, that's going to be of huge help in the future. So this never happens again. And like, even if we did this up front, it still would have happened, because like the payoff is what it is. But it wouldn't have been the 11th hour when we're figuring this out after I've put 2 months worth of work into this thing, just to find out that we can't even buy it at the current price anyway. And unfortunately, like the payoff was just way too much for an investor. Like obviously I fucking have worked, like shown every person I know this deal. And like, if anyone was over the payoff, like I would have just put them two in contact and like buy it, but it wasn't even close. So just had to give it back to him. A bunch of drama happened since then with the deal that's still unfolding. So I'm sure that'll be on lessons learned here in the future once that, the dust settles there. But yeah, huge lesson on that. It's just like, you don't know what you don't know. And like, you just assume that people are doing what they say they're going to do. You take people's word for it. They say they owe this much. It's like, well, they're paying the mortgage. They should fucking know what they owe. And then it comes back and it's 40 grand higher than they said. Big bummer. But we're not going to make that mistake in the future. Yeah. And then I guess basically like the other, I'm sure there are lessons in here, but just a bummer that happened this week is that we lost Connie, our admin, and, she was awesome. And she was like, I think our first good hire, minus Steve, who's been with us since like a couple months into business. And, it sucks to like actually get better at hiring and like delegation and all this stuff. And then, you put the time into people to train them, and like, she's a great culture fit, and like good talent is so fucking hard to find. And then you end up losing them. And it's because of us. Like, we had to lay her off because our overhead has just been out of control like the last 6 months while we're trying to pivot the entire business model. And then taking that huge loss that I talked about on last week's episode, it's like, dude, we just have to lean out as much as possible. And unfortunately, like an admin position is like a cost center for any business. So, she was like, we had to lay her off, but it really really sucked. I think that was Thursday was her last day, where it's just like, damn, like, she was awesome. She's a great fit. And she works hard, and she brings up like the morale in the office, and she's just like has a great personality and like pretty quirky and stuff. And then just to like have to let a person like that go, that's like a huge asset to the company because you fucked it up for the last few months, like really, really sucks. So there's many, many lessons that, are learned in that as far as the underlying problems that caused that. But, that was just one thing that when I was going through my list of what happened this week, like that's a huge bummer. So, I guess the upside of that is that she was never going to be with us long-term because she's getting like a master's degree right now. And then she was going to go pursue her career after that. But we still had like another year until she was done with that. So yeah, it just makes you feel like a fucking idiot when you like, you hire good people that are so hard to find, and then you have to let them go because of your dumbass mistakes.
Stupid.
Okay. So those are the lessons for this week. Couple of wins here. I think it's good to end it on a positive note. And like I said in last week's episode, it's really fucking tough for me to like remember the wins and remember that we are doing shit and that we've come a long way. So, there's lessons in wins too, but it's also just for me so I can get it out there and just think about some good things that happen too. So you're not constantly like in this mode of putting out fires and just like always handling the negative shit in the business. Unfortunately, like there's more lessons for you guys and more value for you guys in the stuff that is not pretty and not like wins, but, there's lessons in everything. So I think it's still valuable to share some of that. So, the wins this week was pretty tough, dealing with all the shit that was going down that I just kind of brushed over on the deal I was talking about earlier, was a huge time suck and a huge like mental bandwidth killer for me. But with that, and then with like Connie leaving, and there was just not a whole lot of like good wins this week. But I think one thing that was good is that it feels like we have like successfully reset and have a good 2-week plan from here on out. Because, we're opening up the virtual market, and we made a decision on the market, and we have that 2-week plan, like dialed in, like super specific actionables. Like this is every fucking thing that we need to do to like open up the market. We need, XYZ things for the stuff like, to get the marketing turned on, to get our software and our CRM and our phone system set up for that local market. And then get some like boots on the ground, get the title company. Like there's a million little sub steps when you start thinking about something as big as like, we're going to like change the entire business model, even though it's the same business. It's like, we're going to go across the country, and we're only going to do it over the phone now. We're not going to take any in-person appointments. So like we're already set up for it. Yeah. But it still just does take like a lot of little tiny tweaks just to sound simple, where it's like, yeah, well, we'll just do it there. But there's like all this shit that needs to happen in order to not be in complete chaos while you're doing it. So super solid plan now for the next 2 weeks on getting all that shit changed and turned on, and to be able to expedite the process to immediately be doing deals in the new market. And then also like a schedule for everyone after those 2 weeks of setup are done, where it's like, this is what everyone's fucking doing for the foreseeable future. And, we're going to stick to the schedule. Everyone is like working as a unit and producing income basically. And that's what we need to do right now. Super, super urgent. And then on top of that, it does feel like our accountability is improving. And that's one big thing that I have always struggled with. And I know Wes does too, to a degree, because like, we're both only children. And I think that actually has a lot to do with it. And if you guys listen to the first episode of this podcast, when I went through my whole backstory, that's a big thing for me, is like being an only child and having this family that's not social and like not doing team sports, like only doing motocross and doing like CrossFit. It's like doing all this shit by yourself, which I'm totally fine with. But, it's really hindered like my ability to lead, at least in the short term. And like, that's just, it is what it is. And we'll keep improving at that too. But, it's super easy for me to keep myself accountable. Like if I'm going to do something, like I will do it. And if I say I'm going to do something, I'll fucking do it. But to keep other people accountable, like even if they work for you and for your company, is super challenging for me. And like delegating is super challenging for me because I have always done everything on my own. So, it does feel like we're getting better, like way, way slower than I would like. But it feels like we're getting better at the accountability portion and like the delegation, especially with this 2-week plan, where it's just like, here's the fucking steps. These steps are assigned to X person. And like, we are now using our daily huddles as like, not reporting your metrics and like, what are you going to do today? Which is how we have treated them in the past. We already know what we're doing, and like, it's accountability. Like, did you do this yesterday? And then if not, why not? And how can we accomplish that today? And that's how the daily huddle is supposed to be run anyway. We just haven't done it right in the past. So I feel like that's another win where, okay, at least for the extreme short term, these 2 weeks, which is like intense, we got to fucking do this shit and we got to do it now. Like the huddles are going to be ran how they're supposed to be, with extreme accountability, and like that delegation is already set from the start. Everyone knows, there's no question on like who's doing what. Your initials are next to the task, and we already have like the time set out, what we think it's going to take, and your estimated completion date. And like, we need to stick to these timelines, and that's the end of it. So I would call that a win in general, because I think what we'll learn in the next 2 weeks is going to be super, super valuable for like ongoing in business, because that's how the shit should be run anyway. So that about wraps it up for this episode. If you're listening on the podcast app, make sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review because that helps it move through the algorithm there. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe if you're new here and smash that like button. Help us out with the YouTube algorithm. If you came from another fucking source somehow, Feeki Flips is the YouTube channel. Go subscribe to that for this and also vlog episodes and other real estate type shit. And thank you for listening and watching. We'll see you on the next episode.